Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Authentic Audience Podcast. My name is Krista Ritma, and I'm your host. Just wanted to start by saying thank you for listening to this podcast. I'm so grateful to have so many listeners that allow me to do this every week, especially during this time of the COVID crisis. It's been the most beautiful way to connect with people. I find sitting here on my floor at 9 a.m. connecting with Martin. He's on the other side of the world and total strangers, yet this total commonality, this total oneness in what's happening in the world. There's a vulnerability, there's a gentleness, there's an honesty that is just amazing, and finding the beauty. I'm really finding the beauty in these conversations. It's weird meeting a stranger during this time, and we talk a little bit about that at the end of the podcast, but what a beautiful conversation today with Martin Johnston. He's the founder of Crafted Society. He's a social entrepreneur doing amazing work in the world, celebrating artisans in Italy and all over the world. His products are absolutely stunning. We dive deep into just the whole topic around luxury for good and what's really going on in Europe and how him and his wife are completely disrupting the industry in such a beautiful way. I love disruptors, and he teaches me a lot. I think education is really important, especially with consumers. I think we need to know in order to change our habits. And he has a really poetic and beautiful way of educating me on what's happening and how to support his company and their mission and what they're doing. And it's so cool because what we do is so different, but our missions are so similar. When you're listening, you'll hear him say things that I say all the time in my business and really similar beliefs. And I really appreciate that. I am getting more and more involved and just aware of how I'm shopping and who my money is going to. And I think obviously I'm not alone in that, right? It's a whole mission that's happening, and we really dive deep into that today. We talk about transparency. He tells me all about how they started, where their money goes, who they support and why, and just his passion, his overall passion for what he does. It really goes back to my whole conversation around Dharma and when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and when you're doing that thing that lights you up, it's really a different energy, and you can feel that today in this conversation. So really excited for you to listen to this one. It's a beautiful conversation, and yeah, I hope wherever you are, you enjoy it. Martin Johnston is a social entrepreneur, CEO, investor, and senior leader. He is founder of Crafted Society and the Honest Luxury Movement. Crafted Society is a transparent, direct-to-consumer brand which uses luxury for good. They provide 100% visibility to the people behind the artisans and craftsmanship labels and give back to causes which provide access to quality education for the next generation. Welcome, Martin. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Krista. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being flexible with the timing, with everything that's going on. Our Wi-Fi was like terrible last week, which is my worst nightmare. So thank you for joining me. I always start by just asking my guests, where are you? How are you? And tell me what's going on in your life today.
Sure. We're based in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And yeah, amid all of this uncertainty, we are still remaining positive. We're continuing to work on behind the scenes on our brand. Obviously, we've been deeply affected because 100% of our production originates in Italy. Not only does our finished goods come from Italy, but also our components and raw materials. So we've been pretty much brought to a standstill with the current COVID-19 situation. But the Dutch government have run a little bit more of a liberal lockdown program. So, you know, that means that our children are at home, they're being house-schooled. In between all of that, we're still trying to prepare for when our new products will arrive and stay positive and reach out to as many of our customers as we can with news articles, relevant things to keep them joined together as a family. So yeah, it's definitely an unprecedented time, but we believe that the whole honest fashion, honest luxury movement is going to be, if not more stronger, when we come out of this pandemic.
I totally agree with you. I just clicked for me that all of your stuff is happening over in Italy. I just was looking at everything and that wasn't even hitting me. Do you have any idea when things are like, do you have any more information than we do?
Yeah, well, we're in contact with all of our partners, whether that be our shoe guys, our bag guys, the cashmere people. I mean, these are partners, but they're really family to us. So we're in contact with them on a weekly basis. And it seems now that with the restrictions being slowly lifted in Italy, that a lot of our artisan partners are looking at getting back on May the 3rd. What we did already back in February, towards the end of February, was that we placed new orders with them. We're a seasonless business, which helps us a lot. But we not only put those orders through, we also put down prepayments because, the one thing that all of the workforce in Italy needs when we come back to this are orders and work. I've been shocked, to say the least, with a lot of major cash-rich companies cancelling orders and putting the burden on, the footsteps of the producers during this pandemic. So that was something that even before the major headlines came out, we wanted to ensure that, we were there to also support all of our people that work with us in Italy.
Wow, that's amazing. Which just goes back to the whole mission of what you're doing and why it's so important. So I'd love to dive into that. I've done my research and I've read all about you and your wife. You are business partners. So my husband and I are also business partners. So I do have some questions on that, but I'll save that for the end. It takes a lot of strength and compromise to work with your partner, I find. So I always love meeting people who also work with their partners because we're rare. We're a rare bunch that decide to do it. But I'd love to start with your trip to India and just how this all started for you, because I don't think very many of my listeners know. So Crafted Society is a luxury brand, and just looking at the website, I've literally had those coral shoes up on my like hearted and saved for like the last 2 weeks since I found them, because your stuff is just so stunning and so beautiful. But I'd love to sort of go back and hear how this began for you and why you're so passionate about it.
Sure. I mean, I've worked in the industry for more than 20 years, and I've been fortunate enough to work for a lot of global, widely recognized brands. And in 2012, my kind of corporate career culminated when I got a call from Santa Monica in Los Angeles from a company called Tom's that asked me if I would be interested to become the CEO for Europe, Middle East and Africa.
Wow.
And I found that super interesting because although, let's say, the actual product side had been a true passion for me, I think also being the father of a young family, starting to put your own life and consumption habits into perspective, I wanted a job that had more meaning, and I found that by joining Tom's. I thoroughly enjoyed my time, and we grew exponentially in our region, which is a pretty big region of about 1.5 billion, I think, people.
Wow.
And our business just it went off, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Until one day I got a phone call from the founder when he said that, they were looking at selling the business to bring on new partners, etc. And in October 2014, the company was sold to a private equity firm. So after a few months, I kind of decided that maybe that was a decent time for me just to take a pause and step back and really consider what it was I really wanted to do. And, I've always been hit very hard by the quote that, if you don't build your own dream, someone else is going to hire you to help build theirs. And
I love that.
It was that like career crossroads moment where we're sitting down together as a family after I'd stepped down. I said, you know what, what's happening? Where am I going to go? There were some offers on the table for new jobs, and me and my wife have always had this dream to start our own brand where we could infuse it with our own values. And we kind of said, well, let's maybe look at that, but let's not jump into it. So in the summer of 2015, we decided to go and take a trip to India, and we visited a charity partner that was run by some friends of ours that were providing daycare facilities to the kids in the slums of New Delhi.
Wow.
And I think that really, it had such a deep impact on the pair of us that when we came home, we were like, look, let's take this knowledge that I'd garnered at Tom's and take these personal experiences of us volunteering in the slums and supporting our charity friends, and see if we can apply that to actually what we were really passionate about, which was, unique, individually handmade, crafted, artisanal products. And, we kind of sat on that dilemma for quite a while, because luxury and philanthropy don't necessarily always go hand in hand.
Right.
So, we were kind of like, look, I think we know what we want to do. We know where we want to make it. We want to make, beautiful sneakers and beautiful bags and all limited edition, but they've got to be made by the best people out there. And we've had this love affair with Italy for as long as we can remember. We're like, we want to do it all in Italy. So we kind of thought by the middle of 2016, we'd have our brand up and running. Well, that wasn't the case. We'd gone to Italy, and as you may know, luxury consumer goods brands are extremely secretive of who makes their products. They talk a lot about craftsmanship, but they never actually put the limelight onto the individuals, the people who actually make the product. So it took us almost a year to find these best-in-class people and also convince them that our approach was, outside of being, crazy in their opinion,
right.
was something that could potentially work. So, we'd set off on this journey to find these artisans, and after about 6 months of going back and forward to Italy, we're driving between the West Coast and the East Coast, from Tuscany over to the Marche. And, every time we met these talented people, we always sat down and asked them what their biggest challenges were that they were facing. And all of them, bar none, said that they were struggling to identify the next generation to come in and learn what had been passed down to them, over the generations. So, we kind of said at that moment, wow, we've got to do everything we can to help preserve a crafted society, a time when people can really appreciate things that are made by professionals, skilled people. And we need to do something about this. So it makes a lot of sense when you understand, coming out of the industry, that these people have almost no opportunity to go and market themselves to the younger generation, because they're bound by confidentiality agreements. Wow. So when they sign up and say they're going to produce for a big house, that house always wants them to sign a confidentiality clause. So the issue with that is that the younger generation, they know the labels. If the artisans that produce for the labels are not allowed to go and market themselves by using those names, then they remain anonymous. And I think that's where we decided, okay, we need to break this circle and do something about it. Wow.
How did that go over with some of the bigger labels? I mean, you guys are quite the disruptors in the industry. What was the reaction like, or what has it been like?
I think we're still, I would probably give you the analogy that, while you're small in a lot of the bigger brands' eyes, they don't perceive you to be anything more than maybe people with pipe dreams. Wow. So the bigger labels have not really come to us or approached us, but at the same time, look, we don't call out the labels. That's not our job. We definitely want to preserve the the workflow that these artisans have with them. The thing that we're doing is just, we're proud of who makes our products, and we believe that they have a right to be known and heard. So, look, I think that specific is what endears us to all of our fans around the world. That we're trying to do the honest thing and the ethical thing, and I'm sure as we get bigger, we'll start to come on the radars of bigger brands. But our long-term hope is that we can just inspire more of the bigger labels to take and adopt the fully transparent approach to their supply chains, because that's the only way in luxury that a lot of these independent artisan businesses will be able to survive.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. I find that a lot in my business too. It's such a fine line because our whole shtick and what we believe in is honest marketing, which, we're like you are a small fish, right? So some of the bigger agencies haven't really caught on yet to what we're doing or what we're saying. But I also believe in not sort of putting them on the, chopping block and calling out other people, but it's also very frustrating at the same time. So with my marketing and my messaging, I try and, say that it can be frustrating to hear this, and it can feel sleazy to sell this way without actually calling anybody out. And I think that's beautiful because it's not really our path to do that. But when you get so involved in an industry and understanding what's really going on, it can be difficult to restrain myself sometimes. So I applaud you for doing that. And I think too, the way I see, you're obviously very much in this world, and I'm very interested in it, what you're doing. I have a lot of guests on here. I think my listeners they kind of go on this journey with me, because whatever I'm interested in at the moment is what the podcast is all about. And right now it's this idea of ethical, sustainable fashion, consumerism, fair trade, all of this stuff. So I've had all of these different guests on here. I actually have another woman coming on from Holland next week that is doing very similar work to you. And it's just what's on my mind right now. So, and when I think about that kind of stuff, I think it's on a lot of people's mind, right? Because I really believe in sort of collective energy. And so when I'm thinking about something, or my mind is getting really interested in something, I'm not the only one. So I do think that the future of fashion, especially with this pandemic right now, even more so, people are so aware of where they're giving their money. Even me lately, which I'm embarrassed to say, I wasn't getting my produce delivery from like the local people in Santa Cruz. I was doing like the California produce delivery. And then as soon as this whole thing happened, we switched to the local one, and we're trying to support our, we stopped ordering Amazon, and we're trying to order from everybody local. And as sad as that is to say, it took a global pandemic for me to do that. I was thinking about it before, but sometimes the convenience for us, because we, like yourselves, are a sort of two-man show here running a business, it's just sometimes really hard, which is why I really appreciate the experts like you coming on my podcast and telling me how it works and where to shop, and you make it really easy for me.
Well, I think Krista as well is that, first of all, the world doesn't need another fashion brand. Absolutely not.
Right.
But what it does need is maybe people that have got the courage to try and enlighten other people as to how it could be. And, I think if you're deep into the industry, or even if you're just interested in it and you do read the media, fashion is one of the biggest polluters to the planet. Fast fashion has been, fueled from this overall consumerism at a price. And I think when we're looking at this current situation, I think the hope from our side is that, ultimately, the only thing that is truly sustainable is if none of us purchase anything, right? But that's that's a fad that is very nice to quote, but is never going to happen. So what we hope coming out of this is that people will actually just pause, and instead of looking at something from a convenience and price plays a role in that, how quickly it can be shipped to you, etc., that people will think, maybe a little bit deeper about what the impact of their purchase is going to have. And I think those brands that are adopting transparency and, You've got a lot of leaders out there in the US as well that are leading this movement. The modern consumer and the socially conscious consumer, they're demanding transparency. They want facts. They want to know who's made it, where it's been made, how it's been made, what raw materials were involved. And I think our approach is trying to look at this top of the triangle, the most aspirational part of fashion, which is luxury. Mm-hmm. And I was completely surprised a few years ago when no one was really leading by example at that part. And I think that's kind of what inspired us to go in there and not just take on the top part of the pyramid, but also do it in a way that is ultimately, my belief, going to start to appeal to more and more people's values. And I think none more so than when everyone comes out of this pandemic. People will still want to buy, but they'll want to buy more conscious. Yes. And they'll want to buy quality as opposed to quantity. They'll want still to buy things that are, in a lot of cases, built to last. And that's kind of our whole dream and goal, is to protect all of these artisans, not just in Italy, but in France, in US, in Japan, in, the United Kingdom. There's a lot of these people that have poetry in their hands. And if we don't all collectively do something about, helping save them, then our kids and our grandkids will never grow up understanding what it's like to have that object of beauty that's been made by the hand.
Wow. I love the way you talk about it. It's like you can just tell it's your whole passion, it's your whole world, and it's just so beautiful to listen to you talk. And I have to agree with you. I am very deep in marketing, and the consumer is craving transparency. The consumer is craving authenticity. And I find a time and time again that authenticity wins. And it's so beautiful to witness that shift happening. And I can see it. People, even in the way they're consuming content and advertising, it has to be real. It has to feel real. There has to be a why behind it. And I just think that, companies like you, it's so funny because you and I have such a similar mission, but we're in completely different industries, but we both believe in so many of the same things. And I'm finding that more and more with people. So I totally agree. And I think it's so much more fun to market. And that was sort of my next question for you. And I know before this, you were involved in Tom's. So you were also involved in a company that was for good. But it just feels good to market and sell products when you have a business that you truly believe in. And how has that been for you? I mean, your brand, I mean, you guys, you're an artist. You guys are artists yourselves. I can tell by just looking at your website and your brand and the quality of these artists and the products that you're curating. I mean, it's absolutely beautiful, stunning stuff. And how, when you go to market and sell that, I guess before it was Tom's, but do you feel, I guess my question is around selling and marketing this stuff and how people perceive it and how people receive it around the transparency piece.
Sure. So I think the first and the foremost thing, and this was clearly learned by me and the rest of the team when I was at Tom's, is that, we're based in Europe, and for all of the good that comes with, tradition and history and benchmarks from 100, 200, 300 years ago, there is also a highly cynical consumer approach over here, which is starting to change. But basically, the majority of the global true traditional luxury brands have all got something called heritage. Right. And they play to that heritage. They go back into archives from 150 years ago or 90 years ago, whatever. So if you don't have the heritage, you need to look from a different angle. And that's kind of what we did. So what I would say is that first and foremost, because Europe is our back garden, you need to make products that are aesthetically appealing to people, right? So our type of products they're very minimalistic in terms of branding, because we're not a brand that believes in big logos. We want the actual craftsmanship to shine through in all of the products that we make. And I think our first notion was, let's first make products that really inspire people. And, the credit there goes to Lisa, because Lisa designs all of our products.
Wow.
The second, so it's all in-house design. We do everything, and then we work with our artisan partners to fulfill the execution on the brief. So from that aspect, first we need to make product that people want. Then our price point needs to be way more attractive than a traditional brand. So the beauty of selling direct to consumer, as you guys know in the States, is that you can cut out all of the middleman costs associated with it. So when we are selling a 100% made in Italy, sourced in Italy, crafted in Italy product for a third of the price, then all of a sudden people really start to like what we stand for. So they're brought in by the quality and the look of the product. They're enthusiastic then about the type of quality price ratio we're offering. And then they really start to become fans and loyal based on the story and our mission of what we're trying to accomplish. So, the interesting things that we've seen is that as we get a little bit bigger and we've been around a little bit longer, we now start to see customers or new customers coming to us for different aspects of what we're trying to do. So either they're looking for something that's definitely on trend, or it's at a right price point, or it's got that made in Italy stamp, or hey, these guys are trying to disrupt a $280 billion a year luxury consumer goods business, and I want to support them. Or I love the fact that they donate 1% of their turnover, not profit, but turnover, because that's also transparent, back to educational causes. So it's starting to resonate on many different angles. And what I would say about marketing, and having come out of, the industry, the beauty of being transparent is that you are never having to fabricate a story for a launch. You just tell the truth. So you can always remember every single season what you've done and what you said, because, it's like you're working with family, and our customers are our family, our artisans are our family. The charities that we support are all part of this broader community movement of society, right? And it's the fabric of society. So, having been schooled in marketing, and I was schooled in America as well. I think at the end, it took me 20 plus years to come back to the fact that the best marketing is honest marketing.
Wow. Well, we're in the right conversation then, because that's my whole thing. Well, it's so funny because so many things you're saying about your brand, I say about my brand. I always say, quality over quantity, and just all of this stuff. Look for quality customers, and followers don't matter. And I always say the easiest thing is to sell is the truth. And that's sort of the thing that I say over and over again. And good marketing is just telling the truth and telling good stories. So it's really beautiful what you're doing. I wanted to talk more about the education piece. What type of education are you providing the next generation of artisans? How does that work?
So when we started, we obviously had a very clear impact goal, which was defined from a primary standpoint within the industry that we're working in. How can we help solve the challenge of the artisans to identify the next generation? So we kind of took that as our starting point. And as we came out of the blocks, we said, okay, we do want to have this social responsibility element, this give back component. So we started to work with the charity in India, which takes kids out of the slums and helps provide meals on a daily basis for them, and schooling, etc. Wow. So that was great. Then we started to work with an organization in Maputo in Mozambique that were taking kids out of the slums and using the game of soccer to help improve and empower their lives.
Wow.
Then we started to look at organizations closer to home. So for last Christmas, or for the last holiday season, we decided to do our anti-Black Friday and anti-holiday season promotion. So instead of giving discounts, we raised the amount of give towards going back to an organization which was educating the next generation of caregivers on how to treat children who have got prolonged hospital stays. So, we've been continually working with different organizations in different parts of the world. But ultimately, our goal is to help the people that actually produce our products, because that's truly the only way that we can then fulfill our mission, right? So
right.
We're talking with now the European Union about grants so that we can actually start our own foundation, which is specifically focused on the preservation of the Italian cultural legacy, which is craftsmanship. So hopefully within the next 12 months, we'll be able to actually kickstart our own foundation, which will be solely focused on identifying the next generation and pairing them with our artisans.
That is so cool.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what really, it's beautiful to make lovely things, but actually when those lovely things can go back towards helping a legacy continue towards the next generation, especially in what we're doing, I think that's when our circle becomes truly formed. And then, we can be self-sufficient as our brand grows as well.
That's so beautiful. Wow. I'm so all about your mission. Lastly, with the artisans, how do you find them? I also have, I've interviewed a bunch of people that have similar missions that you have, and they actually get a lot of slack and a lot of sort of people fighting back when you say you're transparent, that actually sort of attack you even more around this idea of social good and paying artisans what they're worth and all of that stuff. Yep. Did you find that happened with you as well?
Well, first of all, it was extremely difficult to find them because the best of the best are normally the best kept secrets as well. What's happening in luxury, especially in Europe, is that a lot of the major conglomerates have been trying to buy up, those independent artisans for the last 10 years. So that they can basically cover all of their capacity, or as much of their capacity as they can in-house. So the amount of independent third parties that are at a skill level whereby, the big major houses would work with them are few and far between.
Wow.
And then once you do come into contact with them, there's a really a kind of a gray zone, and the gray zone normally hides behind the label made in Italy. So as you may be aware, there's been countless investigative journalists that have gone out and uncovered brands who are applying the stamp made in Italy to their product, but are actually finding out that it's been for 90% produced in Eastern Europe, Northern Africa, China. So, the consumer has been misled for a long time as well. And I think ultimately the only way to stamp out all of that and to pay true cost, true worth with real high quality materials is to be transparent on where all of these come from. And, when we first posed that to our artisans, they kind of laughed at us. They're like, whoa, no one's ever done that before, and then we were like,
even they reacted like that. That's crazy.
Exactly. Yeah. And then we were like, well, we want to go to the next level as well. So how would you feel if we would put your name on the product? And they were like, what? It's like, yeah, we'll co-brand it. Because, if we say we're going to be transparent, we want to give you visibility. So your name has to be on our product. And then on our website, we're going to put all your bios on there and your contact details. And I think they thought, we were definitely crazy at first. But when the New York Times interviewed us a year ago,
I saw that.
We brought some of our guys over from Italy, and, Marco Cini, that runs one of the oldest cashmere weaving luxury cashmere weaving textile companies in Tuscany. And they were asking him, so what do you think of Martin and Lisa? And he was like, oh, I think they're kind of like Robin Hood, you know.
That's so funny.
So yeah, but it's now, you know, what started off as an idea 4 years ago has ultimately helped us create a brand. We've been able to identify and onboard investors from the Middle East, the United States, Europe, towards having our partners who are not partners, they're our family. And I think that's the beauty of why we're passionate about what we're doing, is that it's not a business. We're building a big family where everybody needs to earn a fair amount, obviously, to be able to cover their own costs. But the mission is bigger than almost the cogs in the wheel, if you understand what I'm saying. And
I 100%.
That's what's really driving us. So yeah, it's you know, the nice thing now is that obviously when you start to get picked up and more people start to know about what we're doing, now artisans are reaching out to us.
That's so cool.
And emailing us and going, oh, we've been following you. We love how passionately you talk about our culture, our region, our people, our skill. You know, we'd love to introduce you to our company when you're next in Italy and France and different countries. You know, we've had artisan companies from Japan reach out to us in the US. So I think we're starting to really resonate with a lot of people at different levels as well.
Oh, yeah. And still, to be so young, I didn't realize that you were only 4 years old as a company. We're just 3 years old. And it's amazing what can happen in that short amount of time and how many people can sort of get on board with what you're doing. And I think, you know, for me, I always look at things with a marketing hat, and I'm so curious to why things work and why things don't work. And for me, it always comes down to, and I mean always, the intention behind something. And it's okay to make money. We all, you know, it's a pillar of happiness. We need abundance, and it's important to create that. Like you said, I think of my team and the collective of people that I work with as family as well. And to be able to support them is so, so, so important to me. But the original intention here wasn't to make everybody a lot of money. It was to, you know, create a way of selling yourself, of talking about yourself, of sharing your gifts with the world that is honest. And it's like exactly what you're doing with these artisans. And it's so funny to be sitting here, you know, we're across the world from each other. I don't even know what day it is with this quarantine. It's Thursday morning, and we're just, you know, it's so beautiful for me to continuously, this is why I love this podcast, because people just fall right into my world who I didn't know about before. And our missions are just so, so similar. So I just really appreciate
the beauty. Yeah. I think
beautiful.
The beauty as well, Krista, with a podcast is that, especially in these times, you know, you can take people to a place that, you know, maybe they've always dreamed of being, but never had the opportunity to go. And if you can provide some authentic and honest content that goes with that, then, you know, even better, because there are people that are searching for, you know, captivating content, especially at this time.
Oh yeah. Content is king. Yeah. The podcast is doing so well. And it's just so funny. The timing, I think, is so interesting, because we were supposed to talk last week, and then now we're talking this week, and just every week, whoever I talk to, the timing just like couldn't be better. And I'm excited to continue to follow your journey and support you guys and shop from you. I'm already looking at what I want, but I do have a last question, and that's a little bit more personal, because I too work with my partner. And my question is, what's your secret to working with your partner? You guys also have kids, you were telling me before. So that gives me hope that's possible. We're about almost 2 years into our marriage, and my husband, he joined me. We sort of joined up and formed this company together 3 years ago. So actually, we weren't even engaged yet when we decided to do this together. And it's kind of crazy looking back on it, but it definitely brings a whole other element to business, working with my spouse. So how is that for you? Do you have any advice? Tell me what you feel comfortable telling me.
Yeah, no, not at all. I mean, look, first of all, Lisa's always right. That's probably probably, the best piece of advice is that, listen to the boss and you'll go a long way. No, look, when we had worked together about 14 years ago, when I'd left Tommy Hilfiger, we started a fashion company together, but it was a distribution company. So we'd already had experience of working together for 5 years before I went back into the corporate world. And, she's been a major part of every major decision I'd made in my career, but obviously a major part of every decision I've made privately. So when we decided we were going to do this ourselves, we really sat down and consciously mapped out, okay, first of all, what values do we want to put into this? Because they've got to be the values which keep us connected 100% as a family. So if we can add those values into our brand, we're going to look at our brand as a new baby, as an offset of what we've already created as a family. So, I think after identifying what they were, we then kind of looked at what our unique skills are. And, Lisa's extremely talented in visual aesthetics. She's got a real keen eye for style, quality.
That's for sure.
She's completely self-taught with InDesign, Photoshop, all of the creative elements from Adobe. And I'm good at other things, maybe like brushing the floor of our store and telling our story to people, and so we balance each other off very well. And I think that's probably the key towards us being able to get so far in our brand. We have discussions, and I've got input in areas where Lisa's focused on, and vice versa. So the ability to listen twice as much as you speak, that's why we've got 2 ears and 1 mouth, is a pretty good piece of advice. And like empower. If we're saying we're all about empowerment of our artisans, then I think working with your spouse, you've also got to empower your spouse in the areas where they want empowerment. And if you do that, that is a real key for success, because then, both people remain as passionate as they were on day one, as they are on 4 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think that's really key for us too, is we own such different parts of the business. And I think people sort of envision us sitting side by side, like working, talking, collaborating. And most days I don't even know what Clay's working on, because I just trust him so fully with the parts of the business that he owns, and vice versa. And I think when we do hit those sort of areas of disagreement, I think it's really funny for clients, because sometimes we're on a call and we're quite direct with each other. We're quite sharp in the way that we communicate in front of other people. Yeah. And I think people are like, oh my gosh, but we fight for what's right. So I think our clients know at the end that, if Clay has one strategy, and I'll be on a call with a client, and then he'll come in and be like, oh, you shouldn't do that strategy. And it's like the whole strategy I just pitched them. So it's like, it's sort of like the best strategy wins. But I really like what you're saying about empowering the other person's strengths. And I definitely am hearing you, and also the listening piece. I think that's really important too. But celebrating, and when it comes down to it, for us, we physically couldn't do this without the other person. Like there would be no authentic audience without Clay.
Correct.
It feels the same way about me. So on the days that it's hard, I think we just constantly remember to celebrate each other. But it's funny because so many people are like, now that they're home, everybody's home with their spouses right now trying to work, and they're like, I don't know how you guys do it. And for me, there's really no other way. So it's fun when I get to meet other people that are also doing that, because we're quite, new to the whole entrepreneurship and marriage. It's only been a few years, and knock on wood, people really like what we're doing, and we deliver good work and good results. And so we're actually succeeding. And I think when you start a business, it's hard to think about success. All you think about is every way you're trying not to fail. And then all of a sudden one day you look up and you are succeeding. And it's such a beautiful thing to be able to share with your partner. So Yeah, I'm really excited to follow your journey, the two of you. It's so beautiful. The way you talk about it is just so authentic and poetic and educational. I think education in what you're doing is such a crucial piece to this whole thing. I feel like I've learned so much in this conversation, but it was still so easy and it flowed and it was conversational. But I feel like I have like all of this new information and this new eye and this new filter to when I'm shopping. And I'm still sitting here looking at these coral sneakers. I'm feeling like I have to get them. They're just like so cool and so beautiful. And if my listeners, you have to check out this website. Every single piece is like absolutely stunning. And you can tell, I think you can just, I don't know if it's just me, but you can feel, I feel this way about food too. When it was made with love and when it was made right, you can actually feel it. It smells different. It tastes different. And I can feel that when I'm looking at the products that you guys have on your website. So how is the best way to support you guys? Is it to shop? Is it to spread the word? Give me all the calls to action.
Both. I mean, I think part of our sustainability approach is that we make limited quantities of everything.
I see that. Yeah. Which is great marketing, but it's honest.
I think at the end, right, if you are going to spend decent money, then, there's still an aesthetical element to it that, you don't want to see every other person in your neighborhood with the same product. So we specifically reduce our footprint by producing very, very small quantities of any given run. And, that is something that has really resonated with our customer base. So when we started, people, they had to see it to believe it, but now they know that we only make 24 pairs of a shoe in a color.
Right.
we have like a WhatsApp group and people are like, okay, I'm pre-ordering because they know that maybe we'll make one pair in that specific size. So, they
Cool.
start to get trained now and they're pre-ordering it. And, as we grow, then the word of mouth is starting to spread even more and more. So, for us, it's like, if we have the opportunity, which is what we did last year, which was to actually send a customer of ours to our cashmere factory so they could see how their scarf and their throw was made alongside at the exact same time the two biggest names in luxury. They were so blown away that they were able to see that. And that Marco, who runs Lanificio Arca, he then, he took them out for lunch because that's the Italian way. So we're trying to work on more experiential ways of connecting with our customers as well. And now these customers, they're going to go to Italy again this year for holiday,
right.
and they're going to pop in and have a lunch with Marco. So we're trying to connect people as well. So anything you can do, Krista, to, spread the word, tell your friends.
It's so funny. As we're talking, I've actually texted your website to 6 different people just while we're talking. And to my friend Adam specifically is just going to go wild over this stuff. He appreciates this kind of everything that you're doing. He's just going to go wild over. So it's craftedsociety.com. You can see all the collections. And as you're talking, it's so funny. And I find that the best brands do this whole thing where you're creating only, a handful per order is like one of the best forms of marketing. It's urgency and scarcity, right? And so, and you're doing it naturally, you're doing it authentically. And when you can do that, it works. And it's so cool to see. And I'm totally celebrating you guys today. And I'm just grateful for this call. And we have really awesome listeners. I have a really engaged, cool audience that they're just the like-minded community, right? I just see them as an extension of this collective. And whenever I'm doing these podcasts, I never forget that there's somebody on the other end listening to this and that's who it's for. And this is intentional. And today, this was all for them. So it was just so beautiful to talk to you and connect with you across the world. I'm finding these connections. I always love connecting with people, but I'm not sure if you feel this way right now, but in this time, especially connecting with strangers in this time, it's a really weird time to meet somebody for the first time, just because there's this commonality that we did not have before. We're both sitting at home trying to figure out the best way to survive. And it's just such an interesting time for new connections, I'm finding.
I think so. And it goes back to what we spoke about at the very beginning. And that was regarding authenticity, right? So when you're connecting with new people in a time of despair, which is what, a lot of countries and a lot of people are going through at this moment, and those stories that you are connecting on are authentic and are humanly driven, then I think, it gives you hope that, the world will recover and, people will come out of this stronger, and maybe they'll come out bruised and with a little bit less money in their pocket, but they are going to think about, those people out there that continuously put others before themselves at a time like this. And, I think that's, they're going to be the businesses and the brands and the people that will resonate ultimately and be around for decades to come.
100%. What a beautiful note to end on. The last thing I want to say, I'm going to keep in touch with you because my whole family is actually we're supposed to go to Italy in September.
Please,
right.
Yes.
We were about to book our flights right before this whole thing happened. My dad's always wanted to go. So we're all going. We haven't done a family trip. My husband, my sister, her partner, we have this whole Italy plan. So I'm definitely going to keep in touch because that would be such a cool thing to share with my family.
We have a whole list of must-see things, must-see people, experiences, culture, cuisine. We're like Italy's encyclopedia at the moment.
I'm so excited to connect with you more, especially I think there's one thing about teaching the younger generations, right? But I'm finding so much that I'm getting the opportunity to teach my parents a lot of things,
yes.
to teach my husband's parents a lot of things. And that's such a cool thing that I never even thought would happen. I always thought, my parents are set in their ways, I'm not going to change their mind. But just by living and walking the talk and sharing, you never want to be an asshole. And sometimes it's really hard with your parents to not be an asshole and tell them what to do. But just by, having this podcast and them listening to this, I just think it's a whole beautiful shift that we can do for the generations before us and after us. So I would love 100%. To keep in touch and follow along your journey. So thank you for your time.
No problem. We hope that we'll be at some point this year coming and doing a US Crafted Society Roadshow. So we'll be keeping in touch when we come to LA or Costa Mesa or Santa Clara.
Oh yeah, Santa Clara is very close to me. So just keep me posted. I'd love to connect with you in person. I'd love to just continue this conversation. Thank you for Thank you for doing what you do. I think it's so important, and I'm just grateful that there are people like you and Lisa in the world having this. It's such a specific thing that you're doing, and it's so important. So thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate being on your show today, Krista. Loved it.
Thank you so much. And to everybody listening, wherever you are, I hope you're having a beautiful day. I hope you are being easy on yourself. It's a weird time. So until next week, keep growing.